It's now in its first whole year. We launched it last year. We have distributed computers to all the kids, 11 and 12-year-olds in Iceland. And in collaboration with the national state broadcaster, we are growing the project, I would say month by month, in terms of engagement, in terms of students using their computers, teachers getting involved, and so forth. So I would say that we are in a pretty good and sweet spot. The first time I heard about the microbit was, in a way, a coincidence. A colleague or friend of mine who had worked on my primary elections came to me and told me that a relative of his was working on this project here in the UK. And I immediately became quite intrigued about it, and I asked him to tell me about it. He was in Iceland at that time, and he came for a meeting at my home. And I came to the conclusion that I should call the BBC, ask them about it. I did that. This was in February 2016, and we then had meetings in the following months and became fully engaged in the spring. So it was a coincidence, but as many great things in life, they just happen like that. The reason why I thought that microbit could be important and useful in Iceland is that I had for a long time been thinking of how I should introduce computer skills and programming skills into our school system. There are many obstacles in doing that. It's quite a complicated thing. And one thing, for example, was just how we educate our teachers, how well they are prepared to have this introduced into the national curriculum. So what I thought is that, well, this could be a chance to do without maybe too much of preparation, in terms of we could use their kids, their enthusiasm, the way they just go along with things without somebody telling them how they should do it. So what I thought about the microbit project was that it kind of met the criteria, that we could do something and be steered by what the kids would do with it. So that was kind of got me really interested in the project. Because when you have those really top-down approaches, these heavy top-down projects and project management, the chances of things going wrong or not as you expected are actually quite high. But when you go bottom-up, like it is with the microbit project, where you have the kids and their involvement as your kind of steering wheel or leading guide, then I think there is more probability of success. The current situation in Iceland is, like in many other countries, that we do perceive the need. We know that we need coding skills, but how to introduce that into the educational system? Again, there is the question of how many teachers actually have the skills to teach this. How do we make sure that it can be done in all the schools, not only just in schools, for example, in the capital? And I would say that before we went into this program, obviously there were a lot of kids that knew how to program. But I think that now we have a realistic chance of actually penetrate much more deeply, get much more kids involved, kids that previously thought that there was no chance they were going to learn this. And I think that we also have gotten the parents more interested, because they can see that, just the fact that the kids come home from school with a device like this, and it just arouses interest. So I think that we are in a much better place than we were just 2 years ago. Well, one of the challenges we obviously had was that this happened a bit quickly. That is positive, but it has its challenges. And what I mean here is that nobody had heard about it in Iceland. I only heard about it just through a friend. So it had to be sold from scratch. And we were trying to do this quickly, because I firmly believe that when you have an opportunity like this, the best thing is to actually push for it as vigorously as you possibly can, in order to just try to get everybody enthusiastic and motivated, and thus being able to kind of make something happen. Now, one of the obstacles that I was worried about was teachers' preparation, that the teachers would not appreciate it fully, that they would be a bit wary about something being introduced into the school system without them kind of being the instigators, without them being involved from the very, very early beginning. So we tried to get them on board as quickly as we could, and we did not make this a mandatory thing, meaning that we didn't try to fit it into the national curriculum as an obligation on the teachers. What we said to the teachers community is, okay, here is this device, here is this opportunity. If you see a way to use it, if you find a way to use it, if you are interested, here it is. But there is no obligation, you don't have to do it. And by approaching it like this, it involves the danger of just things not working out as you expected. It's kind of, again, going bottom up. But it means also that you will be able to adapt. You will be able to learn from the way this is introduced and kind of change your strategy accordingly. So at the same time that this was probably the biggest challenge, it kind of got us into a mode which I think was very flexible and therefore quite successful. Obviously, a very important thing was to make sure that the teachers who wanted to use this could get good support. So the new Directory of Education put on their website immediately a lot of teaching material and material that could assist the teachers. We also we made an alliance with some of the tech companies that they would provide teachers with workshops and kind of assistance to help them or educate them or provide them with some material that they could use then as teachers. So by involving the companies themselves on this kind of grassroots level, and this is something that the companies themselves pay for as a volunteer job, we got up to almost 50% of the schools sending teachers into workshops run by those companies, which I think actually is quite a wonderful thing. It creates this community and this common purpose between industry and the school system in trying to solve this problem. Well, obviously it's very important that we find ways to engage students and the general public and educate them about the importance of programming. Now, the way we went about this was to enlist the services of the national broadcasting station in Iceland. And they were immediately from the onset very enthusiastic. And we got them on board almost just the day after I had been here for my first meetings here in London with the BBC. And I talked to the director there and he was immediately sold on the idea. And they had just 1 year before launched a platform called the Children's Radio, where they would have a lot of children material explicitly on a certain platform that was easy for children to engage with. And so they were using that concept and this kind of new idea of television for children as a vehicle for the programming education. And I think that that has been very, very successful. And what they have told me actually is that when they take some of the most popular programs they have on that platform, some of the Disney stuff they have there, whatever it is, actually what they have on computing now and programming is becoming more popular, more frequently visited than even the most popular programs. At the center of the idea was that to get the national broadcasting services engaged. And I think that actually they have done a wonderful job. Well, if you look at the Nordic countries in general, it's obvious that they are quite technology advanced. Maybe not as the inventors of all great things, but more as users and being able and quick to adopt. And this certainly is the case, for example, with Iceland, is that if you look at the tech penetration in terms of how many people are online, things like that, it's actually fantastic. There are opportunities in Iceland for a program, for something like microbit or anything tech related, to actually you have this beautiful little test market where you have everybody connected, and it's a small society, or only 330,000 people, where you can kind of try out all type of new things just to see how it works in a proper society. So I think that people do realize the importance of technology and are quite open to try new things. One of the biggest challenges we have in Iceland is actually how do you then merge this into our industries, and how do you make this work for you in terms of productivity, stuff like that. But that's something that everybody has. I mean, this is one of the greatest and the biggest challenges of modern time. And in order to answer this, I mean, you need to educate your children, make sure that they are ready to tackle the challenges of the future, rather than just educate them like my generation was educated. It was a nice education, but I have to say, if they are educated in the same manner, they are in a really difficult position. So we owe it to our children to make sure that they get the education they need for the challenges of the future. After I had my first meetings with the BBC here in London, I immediately took this up to governmental level and actually introduced this into a cabinet meeting, saying, well, we have this opportunity here, which I think is absolutely brilliant. It solves a problem we have been trying to tackle for a long, long time. And immediately I got a very positive response, and immediately I got from the Minister of Finance, who is now the Prime Minister, I got a heads up from him that I would get the funds I needed to actually go for this. And what I found out is that, politically speaking, there was no question. Everybody who got introduced to this project was interested and very positive. So it never became a political project, because I think that everybody just saw the need and saw the opportunity. We were also, I think, quite fortunate that we immediately enlisted other stakeholders like Iceland industry, and they jumped on board. It took them just a couple of days to come back with a positive answer and money. That plus the national broadcasting services, and then CEOs of some of the big tech companies, they all kind of got together and made this happen. So I would say there was immediately a very non-political flavor to it. Even though it comes as a government initiative, everybody got involved, and that made it sure that people did not treat it as a political project. I would say that now, 12 months after we started this, it has had a very positive result. The way to measure this is just to look at how many children are using this, how many children are responding to the challenges that are put forward on the website where this is embedded, how we are now linking this, for example, with entrepreneurship. Every year we have a competition for 10 to 12-year-olds as entrepreneur, and they put forward their business plans and business ideas, and we are kind of merging the microbit into that competition, for example. So it's growing bigger and bigger by the month. So I think that we are in a very positive situation where we can make a very meaningful impact when it comes to making sure that children learn how to program. And I have to say that that is of utmost importance for us, because we, like all other nations, are faced with this huge challenge of technology, and making sure that the next generation will have, let's say, a competitive edge above what can be done with robots and machines. And in order to do that, they need to be creative. And to become creative, you need to learn a lot of skills. One really important skill to become a creative person in a modern society is to be able to program. I have to say that I was thinking when we started this project that if we get to maybe 5 or 10% of the kids and get them started programming, I would be tremendously happy. But obviously we have gotten far more than these numbers, so I think that when I try to assess where we stand on this project now, I would say that it has exceeded our expectations, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Well, I would like to see the microbit project for the next 1 or 2, 3 years just grow as it has been growing for the past 12 months. Obviously, there is a limit on the time children will be able to spend on programming, but I would like to see it as many children as possible, and especially those group of children, or those segments of our society where you have children with, let's say, face more challenges back home, coming from a more difficult situation in terms of parents or social standing, that we get this across the groups, not just certain parts of our society, but all children have some ability to be able to program. Obviously, some will be very good at it, some not, but to make sure that all the children have some connections to the microbit program. I think that's hugely important. I mean, we need to make sure that they all learn to read, and they have to be able to read properly and understand what they are reading. And we need to make sure also that they learn, and all of them, not just the best and brightest, but just all the children learn some programming. That would be, I would be very happy, and I would deem it as a great success if we were able to kind of do that. This means, for example, that hopefully we can now, after maybe 1 year or so, we can start introducing this more forcefully into the national curriculum. Because now, through the microbit project, we have been able to engage much more teachers in teaching programming, much more children who are now enthusiastic about it. So hopefully we can push it a bit further and systemize it in a way that it makes sure that we integrate programming into more parts of the curriculum, because it's not just programming on its own, it's how you connect programming into things like science, into mathematics, or other branches, be it art or what have you. So programming being an integral part of all those things. So I look forward to seeing that happening. If I was asked by a minister who was thinking about the same problem we have been thinking about, and I believe that they all are, okay, how to do this? At least our experience, or my experience from initiating this, was it is vitally important to get everybody on board immediately. Call in all the stakeholders, not just to inform them later on that this is going to happen and ask them then, just call them in on day one. Make sure that there's a team around it, that everybody are made to understand actually that here is an opportunity, and it's up to us to grab it and do something about it. And at least the way I thought about it, that this was the best opportunity I had ever seen introducing programming into the school system. All the other ideas that I have been looking at, they were of much smaller scale. Just the idea that you could get these computers to every kid in your country is something very compelling. So to get everybody on board, sell them the idea, sell them the opportunity, and which I think that was very important in Iceland, to get the media in Iceland. We use the national broadcasting services, whatever media use, but it's very, very important to use the media. I think that it almost cannot be done without that. And I think actually for modern media, the role they can have in education is much bigger than actually they have been providing. So it's a great chance for them to actually prove themselves and show that they really have a role to play in this important area.